Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and today we've got a big topic on chronic pain this month. I have Jake LaShot here with me today. He is a physical therapist with our TMC Adult Outpatient Therapy, and he's going to be sharing about exercise and activity for chronic pain. I know we have a lot of people who have chronic pain, and this is a series. So we've already had one on medications, and we have another one tomorrow on sleep and persistent pain as well. So you may be joining us online, or you could be joining us in person today. If you have a question and you're at home, please feel free to leave those in the chat. And then I'll have him address those questions after the presentation. So welcome, Jake.
Thanks, Maya.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull your presentation up for you, and you should be good to get started.
Okay, alrighty, thanks. So like Maya was saying, this is part of a chronic pain series. It's a 6-part series. This one specifically is on exercise and activity as it relates to chronic pain. Tomorrow is actually on sleep. So if anyone's interested on joining us for that one, there is later in this month one on mental health. And then the series starts over again. It starts out with pain science. I'm going to brush up on that just a little bit right now. And then there's also some on diet, nutrition, and medication management, all relating to chronic pain. We helped start this persistent pain series mostly because we didn't want any barriers to access to good information. If we can share as much as we know and help people out in chronic pain, we regularly enroll this series of classes every so often. So go ahead and get started here. So this one's specifically on exercise. So in the very first lecture, these are online, by the way. They are on our YouTube channel and Facebook. They'll be coming around again, like I said, but the original lecture is about the science of pain and what chronic pain is being different from normal acute pain. Chronic pain is physically something different to the nervous system. Today, we're going to talk about why this changes. Mostly this other half, the right side of the slide here, how exercise affects some of the nervous system modulation, how the immune system works, and then how our nervous system amps up a signal of pain abnormally and how we can reduce it through exercise, and why is it important that we exercise. So this is kind of the heart of it. People hurt, so they don't feel like moving. And when they reduce their activity, they lose muscle strength. They become less capable, they become more pain, and that leads to more rest. And the cycle kind of continues and continues. And if we can break this, that's where the chronicity happens in development of pain. A lot of people say I hurt, so I don't exercise. So it seems counterintuitive to promote exercise as a way of changing chronic pain. But in reality, when you look at the science of it, it's called hypoagesia. So basically, exercise does turn down the nervous system and the immune system in some ways to limit how much pain affects the body. This is a study down at the bottom there that shows, they call it bothersomeness, but basically they take people through in chronic pain through exercise programs and do prove that they can change their pain. There's a difference in what kind of exercise you do. We're going to get into that a little bit, but strengthening exercises tends to increase your pain threshold, and endurance exercises tends to make you last longer with your pain threshold. So some complement of aerobic plus anaerobic, like strengthening plus walking, tends to be a good complement for changing people's pain when it comes to chronic pain. But this is really how it happens. So there's a lot of chemistry that happens when we exercise. When we use our muscles, it signals the next steps for cleanup process to happen in our body. It's very complicated. I won't get into the details, but without muscles being used, the next steps don't happen, where all the other signals in the body don't get started, where the body goes and cleans up all the inflammatory mediators, all the things that stimulate nerve endings and tell your brain that things are bad. If you don't do this on a regular enough basis, then we get an accumulation of them. We always have metabolism, it's always running, and there's always a byproduct of metabolism, kind of like the exhaust in your car. If that sits around too much, it's bad for you. But what it does do is it stimulates all tissues because it heightens the nerve endings, and that signal gets carried to your brain and it says, ouch. And if we can modify that by cleaning it up on a regular basis, that's the real art of how exercise contributes to changing chronic pain. And then from a nervous system standpoint, so that was the chemistry of it. The nervous system standpoint, basically when it comes to the science of it, chronic pain does structurally change over time. So all of these steps from, say, at the bottom there where it has a muscle, all the way up to the brain, there's a lot of steps that happen. And let's say if you strain a muscle and all those signals have to go through all of those steps, every one of those steps has a chance at modifying the signal, either enhancing it or dropping it or making it less. Every single one of them has a role in changing pain so that it can be more or less. And that's kind of the bad part about chronic pain. It's multifactorial, it comes from lots of different ways. Where the left side of the column says descending facilitatory systems, basically they call it descending modulation. So can your brain turn down the rest of the signals in the body to ultimately change the structure of it so that it records pain in a normal way, basically proportional to what it makes sense to be. So instead of having some pain that seems disproportionate to what's actually going on in the body, exercise helps regulate and structurally change the nervous system in a way that makes it accurate or calibrate it more. What it comes down to is a lot of genetics, really. So epigenetics, people know about their genes. Genes tell your body what to do, like build new stuff or change this chemistry, but epigenetics is around genetics. So basically there's lots of things that can change our genes. It could be behavior, it can be exercise, it could be medication, it could be cancer, it can be lots of things. But what exercise does in a chronic sense, gradually over time, is change your genes to promote less inflammation, and it makes your nervous system better adapt to deal with the next factor. So this is the mechanism of how that previous slide, the whole structure can change. You, by your behavior and how much work you put in, can change how much the genes play a role and how much you hurt. So it takes the time to gradually change the nervous system. But what it really is activity is a way of protecting us. It's our repair mechanism. It's how we clean up things. The stronger and more robust it is, the more opportunity it has to save itself against insult. So it seems to be that our current lifestyles and the way we live is kind of a genetic mismatch to our species. One Harvard study gets into the depth of it of basically if exercise is protective and that's necessary for our genes, and if we don't get enough of it, then our genes don't match our current lifestyle, and therefore we actually have a chance to develop chronic pain when it's a kind of an unnatural state. When we do hurt, basically genetics in the past, we had to keep moving or survive. If we didn't, then we wouldn't survive. And so the theory is that we develop structural changes of the nervous system because of this process, because we don't keep moving when we're hurting, which is complicated. The chemistry is complicated as well. So it's not just a mechanical thing. There's lots of chemistry that makes us hurt. So our immune system gets to work. It can amplify signals. So we tend to think of pain as purely mechanical, like I stress my knee joint and that signal goes to my brain. And then there's basically what you would consider a proportionate response. I stressed my knee this much and it should hurt this much. But that's not really true. When we have kind of inflammation about us all the time, those kinds of mechanical things get amplified abnormally. And if they stay inflamed all the time, then that chemistry does change the structure of our nervous system to report more pain disproportionately than is normal. excess body fat on us, our immune system going to work, just total weight on our joints, lots of different things. Their chemistry is complicated, but how you regulate it, part of the process can be exercise. So it isn't just about the nerves. The nerves themselves can amplify it. The chemistry, like inflammation and factors, can amplify it. But there's a lot of modified steps into that first picture there, where they all play a role in all of the steps in modifying pain over time. And it is multifactorial, and that's why this pain series has a lot of different topics about it to change pain. It isn't just going to be exercise by itself. But the overall goal of changing chronic pain, it changed for you in a sense that reports more pain than is appropriate. And it's what we call plasticity. So the nervous system's plastic. It can change back. So if it's changed to a chronic pain state, you use these tools to change it back to probably a more appropriate pain state. One interesting factor on the chemistry of it, we have our own endogenous cannabinoids. So basically that just means inside of us we have our own cannabis-like structures that they go to work in cleaning up some of these inflammatory mediators. So we are actually pretty unique as a species to benefit from exercise, human beings particularly. For some reason, our chemistry works that the more exercise we get, we tend to benefit from it more. My dog can lay around all day and do like 100% from the couch and be fine with that. Gorillas, apes, they can lay around quite a bit. They have a lower metabolism and a different food source, so they can get away with that a little bit more. But they don't tend to need to move as much as we do. We have this constant byproduct of metabolism, and it always needs to be cleaned up on a regular basis. And we have to move a little bit more to help with this process, but we also tend to benefit from it more. Our nervous system in our brain rewires itself in a reward pathway the more that we do it. So some people don't like to exercise, and that's, believe it or not, normal. As an organism, we're not supposed to go and exert extra effort on purpose. If anything, our species always had to like farm and carry water and grow food and, tend to livestock and do things physical. And that constant movement kept our bodies healthy. Now we don't have as much opportunity, so we do have to seek it out. But gradually over time, when you do that activity, the reward system in the brain gets really turned up, and you tend to benefit from it more the more you do it. And it's more motivating when internally your chemistry enjoys the process of exercise. But you tend to lose that when you don't exercise. So those receptors for reward basically go away as time goes on, the less that you do. And then you got to work at it to build it back up. But yes, we are supposed to exercise quite a bit, and we're actually pretty unique as a species to benefit from it and enjoy it and have these reward pathways. And if we can keep that going, that's the real art of staying healthy. So the minimum amount, what the CDC would recommend, is 150 minutes per week, 2 days a week of at least of that being something strengthening. It tends to be 8 to 10 different strengthening exercises. Squats, lunges, wall push-ups, shoulder presses. It can be just a couple of them really. But if you're doing those 2 days a week and 150 minutes, that is 40% reduced risk for all causes for mortality. So you can take a decent chunk off of all causes of mortality if we get to this number. So that's the minimum. So not to say that this is the goal. It's the goal to keep this as a minimum. And if we can do more than that, it tends to benefit us even greater. So there is new research that seems to support that in the absence of 150 minutes per week, we will just develop chronic diseases. It tends to be true across all categories: cancer, diabetes, stroke, heart-related illness, you name it. So where the real sweet spot seems to be is 150 minutes to about 600 minutes per week. And that tends to be low intensity to moderate intensity. I'm going to get into the intensity part of it here in a little bit. So it is abnormal to get less than that 150. Somewhere between 150 and 600 is what you're trying to aim for. I would say 600 is a lot. Between like training for a couple running races and biking races, I still don't get to 600 minutes. And you don't really start getting back time in life until you get until like the 1100, 1200 minute range, which is quite a bit. I mean, I even have some Ironman athletes right now, and they don't even get to that number. So it takes quite a bit of too much exercise to take away from your health. Oh, and there it is. I just said that. So yeah, if we can't aim for that sweet spot, then there's quite a reduced risk for all-cause mortality. So this is a chronic pain series, and I'm trying to get people moving, and there's a lot of myths about chronic pain, and there's a lot of difficulties with getting people in chronic pain to move. If we can, get some background information about what's good for us and what's appropriate, and culturally change some of the conversation that we tend to have about chronic pain, it tends to help get people moving. This is kind of stuff I say all day in the clinic. Pain does not equal damage. Pain, and this is in the first pain science series, pain is your brain's best guess that something's wrong, and it is not proportionate to the actual physical damage that you're getting in your body. It is a guess. So when you are having pain, it does not mean you're damaging something. So when someone is in pain, and when they are, say, in chronic pain, and they're trying to do activity and they're feeling pain, the best thing is to approach it in a way, from a cognitive standpoint, that it's not hurting you. It's not contributing to damage because that's what you're actually feeling. There's that common pain scale that you would see on intake forms, 0 to 10, 0 being no pain, 10 being the worst pain ever. I'd say if someone's doing an activity and it stays in the 4 or 5 range, it's not lasting, it doesn't last more than 48 hours, consider whatever it is that you did getting away with it. I don't think it's expected to do stuff and not have some pain, but it does give you some leeway with, okay, I can have some pain and do these things, I'm going to survive it, and it's going to be fine for my body. And actually, it'll have some payoff because I'll gradually train my nervous system to be okay with what I'm dealing with. Some difficult things about chronic pain, scans like MRIs showing disc bulges, and you've been told not to lift because that'll make that kind of thing worse. There's a lot of myth to be had about that kind of stuff. Whether arthritic changes are something you shouldn't exercise on, it really just depends on what your status is. There's a lot to navigate there, and I can't cover it all in one lecture, but in reality, exercise for chronic pain, degenerative conditions in general, they're good for it. If you can fit exercise in, there's an overall argument here that it is going to benefit whatever it is that's going on with you. You just have to be crafty about how you approach the process. So here's some of those myths examples. So British Journal of Sports Medicine, arthritic changes in the knee are worse in people that don't exercise than people that run. There's kind of a sweet spot for runners, though, recreational runners mostly. You don't really see any arthritic changes above people that don't exercise unless they're in the elite or professional level. And then to the right, those colorful graphs are discs. So when you MRI someone before an exercise program, like a running program or walking program, and then you MRI their discs later, the human body is use it or lose it. So discs and cartilage behave exactly the same way. If one has been told you've had a bad disc, don't exercise because you're going to put too much stress on it and you're going to make it worse. Well, what that colorful graphs are showing that when you stress a disc and you use it, your body gets that stimulus to go and make more total disc. It makes them taller. So the colorful graphs are actually one getting taller. They're showing 50K worth of running for an individual. And then the graph shows the kind of height increases. So anyway, the data is pretty clear that low load stresses on discs do gradually increase their height. It makes good nutritional exchange. It makes more room for the nerves that come out on the sides. It brings the joint surfaces away from each other that might be arthritic and hurting whenever you do activity. So those are kind of the myths that I like to bust, because then people see their scans, or they kind of have this idea of their injury in their head or what they're dealing with, and they don't believe it can change. But in reality, there's exercise or some form of exercise likely benefits that condition. Just to get dramatic about it, like here's one where they took a bunch of people with middle age. I forget where the middle age was, like 50s, in the mid 50s, I think, but I think as high as some folks in their 70s. Never ran a marathon in their life, MRI'd their knees before marathon training started, allowed them to go through 4 months of marathon training and then complete the London Marathon, and then re-MRI their knees and just see what happens. So these people never had any knee pain, but 50% of them had abnormal findings on their MRIs. So they had tendinitis and bursitis, meniscus damage, meniscus tears, and thinning of cartilage, and pretty much all conditions improved with 4 months of marathon training and completing a marathon, and for never doing it ever. And this is within middle life. So all of the cartilage got thicker. It's the same argument of use it or lose it. So cartilage likes to be compressed. It doesn't get any new nutrition unless you actually squeeze it like a dish sponge and you get new water in it. It can't get that nutrition exchange unless it gets used enough. And once it gets stimulated to be used, your body actually lays down more and protects your joints. So that's literally protective to arthritis. And in this case, it even showed like meniscus damage. Some of them being they call them the posterior horns, the back side of meniscus that tend to get chewed up quite good when you twist your knee. Even those stabilized, they scarred over and healed, and they tend to behave better for people. So just an example of how powerful exercise can be. You know, somebody's got meniscus damage or arthritic changes and they're told don't do stuff. Well, you're probably contributing to the total mortality of that person by not keeping them moving. So a lot of people know exercise is good for you, but you know, in reality, it tends to take all of the top killers of us right off the top. So stroke and diabetes and heart blood pressure changes, cancers, Alzheimer's, depression. Exercise has a powerful effect on all of these things. You tend to get sick less often. It makes us more robust. It's the protective mechanisms. So it's exactly that chemistry argument. When we exercise, we clean up the inflammation. When that inflammation isn't around, we tend to not have these common killers of us. And like I said, some of it is just our comfort level. We have good lives right now. We don't have to seek out, or we don't have to do exercise if we don't want to. So we do have to go seek it out. But what it does do is it makes us have a little amount of capacity for things. I would say the top graph is what most people would want, where you have a decent capacity to do things. Like if your back hurts and you decide to do a lot of yard work, then you don't result in back pain, right? But in reality, what chronic pain does is it gradually trains the nervous system over time to the point where not only the nervous system reports an abnormal amount of pain, but the capacity of the body is poor. You basically can only do a little amount, and those muscles aren't there for you, or your endurance isn't there for you, and you have this kind of small zone here where you can actually test yourself and get away with it. And exercise does do over time is change that threshold. It changes your body's capacity to tolerate activity. And people with chronic pain, they tend to have a frustrating experience because they go do something and they hurt, they rest too much, and then they go attack it again and they hurt again. And then they basically gradually get to doing less and less as time goes on, and they have this belief that I'm going to hurt myself when I go do that thing. In reality, we should probably not do this boom and bust approach to activity, like I'm going to do all my housework all in one day and then just lay around for 2 days because I hurt. It's not the best approach. More likely, we should probably nudge this line and figure out where your starting point is when it comes to either formal exercise and or just activity by itself, like yard work, housework, and those kinds of things. But this is probably the most common pattern for chronic pain people. They're frustrated. They say, I can't do things around my house. I can't exercise. But it may be just that their approach is poor. And there is a sweet spot there. It's basically like your body has a certain amount of capacity, and if it's low, then you're basically not going to be able to do much. And this is the kind of graph I would show in front of like athletes. Runners are an easy example. If I've only been running 1 or 2 miles at a time, if I ran 20 miles all of a sudden, I would expect to hurt myself. But you can look at this for anything. I can go in my garage and do 3 sets of 10 of lifting weights, and that's cute and all until, I have to move all my patio pavers from one end of the house to the other. And, I can't be too mad about the fact that my back hurts afterwards because I exceeded my capacity. My 3 sets of 10 in the garage weren't matching my requirements of my body to move 6,000 pounds of pavers in 8 hours. But we tend to look at it that way for some reason. I should be able to do these things, and you get mad when you hurt yourself because you moved the couch or something. But, if you look at it in a more objective way, like all of a sudden I do a lot of activity and I hurt because of it, it may be just because of that, and your capacity is low. So the idea is gradually train the body, train the capacity up, gradually run more so that you can run for further and not hurt yourself. But that's the same for all activity. So I'm going to get into a couple of slides because the thoughts and perceptions about what aging is bothers me. And I'm on a soapbox all day about this, like how much hurting contributes to pain. How much aging contributes to pain and what's normal is hotly contested. I would say a lot of people come in and say, oh, I'm just getting old. I hurt because I'm old, or I hurt my back because I'm old. And a lot of that just doesn't make sense, not for the science. Here's an example. So, the closest thing that we have to seeing what normal human capacity is studying populations that probably live like our ancestors did before, like closest to that. So the hunting gathering communities or farming communities where they don't have kind of modern access to food. They grow their own food, they till their own fields, they haul their own water. When you study those kinds of populations, that's probably the closest we can get to seeing what's normal for our species, like how much can we tolerate, how much can we do, and what does aging look like, and what are we supposed to look like as life ages. So these are graphs of grip strength. So basically everyone in different communities squeeze this little meter and it tells you how strong your grip is. And what you're seeing is the little dots are all over the place, but lines, some of them kind of gradually slope down. And I think you would kind of expect a bit of sloping. Some of them don't, some of them go pretty well straight across. So when you squeeze this little grip thing, you'd expect like a 20-year-old person to have a greater grip strength than an 80-year-old person. And in these populations, you're not really seeing that. You're seeing some decline, but pretty much 20 to 80, not much total change in grip strength. And it's because they tend to use their strength all of their life. A lot of these are communities where they grow food, and so they're digging. And so some of them actually, some of the 70-year-olds had greater grip strength than the 20-year-olds. They think because 20-year-olds are probably of breeding age, and so they're probably more dealing with childcare and everything else and not tilling the fields. But this also tends to be true for other things that you'd measure. 20 to 80 years old, there's no changes in blood pressure. You're not seeing changes in diabetes. You're not seeing fat accumulation on folks. Total mass on someone, like muscle strength, doesn't seem to change. This is an example of that. And their metabolism doesn't seem to change. What dictates a lot of our metabolism is the amount of muscle we have on us. And it's kind of a myth that gradually we lose metabolism over time. No, we gradually lose muscle, and therefore our metabolism decreases. But so if these lines go straight across, and these are the populations that are still hunter-gatherers, this is more like Americans. It's just this gradual decline straight down. And it's less than half of the grip strength at the same age. So bodies use it or lose it. It is not normal to lose this kind of strength as we age. It's purely the work we put in over a lifetime. So this is from research out of Harvard. It's the same kind of stuff. There's a lot to unpack on this slide. This is from a great book called Exercised. It's by Daniel Lieberman. He's a Harvard anthropologist. And it's about the same kind of stuff. So The top graph is those populations of hunter-gatherers, and the bottom half is United States. So I would say in the United States, we have this perception that we have this gradual decline into disability and thoughts that as we age, we're just less able and do less. So on the top there, there's this kind of gradual, sort of slow decline in, there's two different things. There's a health span and there's a lifespan. So technically, as Americans, we tend to live longer than those in those other populations. And on that graph, it looks like about 5 years as an average life expectancy. But what happens is there's this steep drop at the top. It goes across broadly and then declines sharply. And then that shaded region is basically the years spent in disability. And that's more normal to our genetics. The bottom is more or less what we experience as Americans. So we kind of get towards 50 years old and things start to go downhill, and we tend to spend a lot of time in disability and disuse. And that's not normal. I think everyone would agree that, if you were to script life perfectly, you would live life really awesome and then dead. And that would be perfect. You would have not a lot of time of you can't do things you want to do or enjoy the things you want to do. In reality, exercise makes up that gap. And that's what we call master athletes. So it sounds intimidating, like these are just folks that just exercise all day long. But in reality, they're the ones that are those 150 to 600 minute range. I'm going to go back a slide. Basically those that do that 150 to 600 minute range, they fix this shaded region of disability. That morbidity time is compressed to more like this steep one. So if we take those same athletes and watch their life and see how their lifespan goes and how much total chronic disease they develop, it looks just like the first graph, like it should be meant for our genetics. And this is part of that puzzle. Like I said, our chemistry of us humans is really complicated. Some people think, it's true that, if we do lose muscle as we age because you can't keep that up, but it's actually a two-way street. The muscles, when they decrease, signals to our body to age. So our rest of our body is actually taking a signal from our muscles. When you have less of it, it signals the process of aging over time. So keeping up this muscle density literally promotes your body to just keep from aging. It's called senescence. And here's kind of an example of that. So these are MRIs of people's thighs. 3 different people, they're laying on a table. What you can see in the middle there is a femur bone, the leg bone. And then this is all the meat around the leg. So these are 3 different people. What happens though is the 40-year-old triathlete looks pretty similar in muscle density to that 70-year-old triathlete. And then there is another person here that is sedentary, but is 74 years old. And you see a lot of fat accumulation. If you ever looked at a steak in the grocery store and you look at one that's got like a high muscle density versus one that's kind of marbled with fat, we kind of look like the marbled with fat kind when we don't move enough or keep up our density. But you can see how controllable this is, like how much muscle density difference. It's about the same between the two. And a triathlete, that's a lot of exercise, believe it or not, but it's just an example of how powerful this could be. But that certainly stimulates the body to not age, keeps the aging process at bay. So how hard do we work? Because a lot of this is kind of intimidating. Believe it or not, it's not much. We don't have to be in the hard and maximum range to get benefits. The moderate and down is pretty much most of the time you should be doing. Like between the training for a marathon and a bike race that I have coming up, I'm still not close to that 600 minutes, and most of it's in moderate or less. I would say I'm kind of in the light to moderate, and very briefly am I in the hard, maybe if I'm up a hill 1 day a week or something. But you can get most of the decreased mortality risk by staying in the moderate and down. But no risk it, no biscuit. So if you do push yourself, you tend to ward off chronic pain, and it tends to push that sensitive nervous system the other way to a greater ability if you do push it more frequently. So if you take this very large study of a lot of people over 50 years old, and what are they reporting for their activity levels and what kind of pain are they in? It seems like if they do something pretty vigorous at times, they could push that sensitive nervous system the other way better. Tends to be vigorous swimming and playing tennis, but they were even reporting things like doing hard labor and those kinds of things. And it tended to have, they are technically risking it more, like they're pushing themselves harder, but they tended to get more payoff. People do wonder about exercise, like what can I get away with and how much. It's the most common question, like walking. Walking's pretty easy to get. You don't have to be very vigorous about it. It can be broken up quite a bit. I think the data shows if you're not getting at least 3,000 steps in a day, that is quite a bit of increased risk for mortality. And that's not formal exercise. That's just steps in a day, like you go about your normal day. But if you're getting closer to 6,000, it tends to be quite another bump in the mortality risk. 10,000 is best. And that's some combination of just the steps you would take in a day plus a formal version of it. So going for an actual walk. Like I said about the pain thing, if you're kind of staying in a low level range of pain and you're getting away with it, consider it safe and try to keep doing it. People wonder about fitness through their housework or their job. The data is kind of unsatisfactory. It's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes a very vigorous opportunity of mopping can contribute to your fitness. But when it comes to reporting and measuring this stuff, we're kind of unreliable in reporting. It's mostly because people would report things vigorous when they're probably not. So everyone's opinion can vary a ton. Like maybe vacuuming their whole house, they would consider that vigorous. But in reality, when it didn't terribly contribute to their fitness. But my dad's a good argument. He lives in Alaska and he has to shovel snow, and his sciatica's less. His blood pressure goes down, and he actually can get off his blood pressure meds. I don't think he's going to hear me talk about him on this lecture. And then he gets off of his some of his diabetes medication just because he gets regular enough fitness. And what he does do is he's kind of clever about it. He'll shovel only just a spot for his truck, and then he'll park in just that and save the rest for later. And he'll just park one strip each day, so he saves one part each day. And then he'll go back to the original strip and just always have something to do every day. And all of his health factors improve. So case in point, fitness can be achieved through housework. It's not a reliable measure, but there's certainly ways and opportunities you can do it. Like if you do choose to mop your floors in a vigorous manner, well, right there, you could feel your heart rate up and you can get a chance for fitness. And some people say, well, I walk all day for my work, I work hard. It seems like the science doesn't really agree with that either. The hard part is the unreliable reporting measures. And then, some people that might have a vigorous job, like a construction job, it probably isn't the only thing that's going to save them from bad health. And exercise in isolation isn't going to save you from a bad diet or smoking habits or anything like that. But there's certainly a reason why my plumber doesn't look like an athlete. He's working all day, physically hard, but by itself doesn't seem to change mortality risk. So probably one of the bigger things about getting people moving though is all the barriers. There's lots of different reasons, multiple comorbid conditions like back pain plus arthritic pain plus feet pain plus poor endurance, multiple medications, dizziness, you name it. But there is a lot of different ways to get around that. And you have to be crafty about how to get this worked into your life. There's a lot of belief patterns that you can change, motivational factors. Try to work it in your favor to figure out how to make this habitual. So if you can, figure out what you like, try to do it with other people. It seems like as a species, that chemistry reward thing that I was talking about seems to be a greater enhanced when we do it with other people, as long as they don't keep you back. And they can contribute to a regular fitness program for you. If it's about where you live, like your walking community isn't safe or the weather's bad or something, go figure out another way to walk somewhere else or join a gym somewhere, or there's multiple classes around. TMC has plenty of classes that are available. A lot of the gyms around have free classes, but do something you enjoy. There's lots of barriers to reasons that we would seek out fitness, and so get crafty about how to navigate those. I would say the biggest reported one is time, like the amount of time people have. That's kind of hit or miss too. The pandemic was a really good social experiment. We all had a lot of time all of a sudden, and we all exercise a whole lot less. So, I think it's multifactorial, not just time. Some people just truly don't have the time. That is true. But yeah, some steps to a happier workout. Do it in small bursts. Try new things. Do things you enjoy. Do it with people that might motivate you or keep you honest. Sometimes an exercise class is a way to keep honest because you have to be at a time and a place and people are relying on you to be there. Obviously stuff that feels good. I hate treadmills. You won't see me on one. Don't do that if you don't like it. So seek out things that you enjoy. But it is multifactorial. So people's energy level might be poor when they're in chronic pain. And so they feel like the last thing they got to do is go do things that brings down their energy. But in reality, it's going to be affecting a lot of the things. You'd be surprised that the effect, like when I have poor energy at the end of a workday and I go push weights around, I felt energized. And it contributes to improving sleep. That's the repair process our body has to have, and that's some of the talk Emily's going to do tomorrow. Depression rates, anxiety rates, they do decrease with exercise. If you're checking all the right boxes when it contributes to all these health factors that contribute to your good health, then you're kind of winning. You can't do exercise just by itself, but once you feel better enough to exercise, then it all contributes. So. Do pace yourself, though. I think people get motivated when they hear new content. Try to not do the boom and bust approach. Try to pick away at any new program with less than you think you ought to and just see where you're at. I would say if I ever take like a 2-week break from weightlifting, I always do like less than half the sets and reps that I would do normally. And I'm always surprised now. Sorry, it gets me. Feels unfair because that's how fast we lose fitness. It's about 2 weeks. But take it gradual and smaller chunks, take decent breaks and approach it kind of a smart manner so you can be successful in starting a new strengthening program or fitness program. Those that have this chronic fatigue problems, there's a budget to be had. Those that chronic pain, is common to have kind of chronic fatigue and energy level issues. I would say your other activities really have to be budgeted as well. If simple things like taking a shower or doing multiple doctor visits, doing a large grocery event, you do have to approach those things in kind of a smart manner to figure out, can you do these things all in one day and also do exercise? And fitting that all in has to be budgeted for sure. So placebo and nocebo are two different things. I think most people know what a placebo is. So common way of testing that is, say, medication trial, where they have somebody take a medication what they expect to have a certain result. And then some people don't get to know they're taking a fake version of that. There is a lot of that going on with exercise. Nocebo is the opposite. So placebo is when you get a positive effect. Nocebo is a negative effect. One good example is the weather. Everybody here says, my knee hurts because the weather's changing. Quite debatable. So that's kind of one of those negative effect things that your perception of it has probably a greater total influence on the actual effect of exercise. So exercise placebo studies are actually pretty fun. If I take normal healthy athletes and put them in a room and basically lie to them and say the room temperature is hotter or more humid or colder or less humid, and then test them at their max capacity, so it's called the VO2 max test, you will see the effect of lying to them greater than the actual changes in temperature. So you put them on the bike and you tell them go all out and we'll see how well you do. And then you lie to them and say, oh, the room's going to be really hot, and you'll see their performance decrease. But when you do the opposite, you lie to them and you don't change the room and it's actually hot in there, they actually do just fine. And this is where our perception of things can be very hotly tested. And that's where changing your perception of what you could feel you can do with your body is something that you should explore. You do need to explore your physical limitations to see what you can get away with. If you do believe things to be true, like I can't do exercise or I'm going to hurt myself if I do certain things, it is certainly up for grabs to question those things. If we could tease out little differences in placebo, nocebo, and healthy people and basically trick them, we're very trickable. So do question the process of what it is you're dealing with from an injury standpoint or a chronic disease standpoint, and see if there's something you can affect. Try to have happy thoughts about what your body can do for you. So long story short, exercise is safe and it does not contribute to degeneration, or it doesn't have to. Chronic pain is the nervous system that has changed. It's going to get you thinking that you're going to hurt yourself when you do it, but this is one of the methods that you use to get it back, to change it back. It changed for you and you're going to have to change it back. Pain is trainable, but it has to be enough total dosage for your body to get the hint to gradually change back. It takes time, have patience. Humans are meant to move a lot, and it isn't normal to have that much rest or even just a sedentary life. It is a mismatch for our genetics. We do have to move enough to ward off disease. And then do the best you can to remove the barriers for you to seek out fitness. Figure out how to make it successful. Use your resources, join a gym, use a trainer, physical therapy, ask your doctor, join friends, get on online chat groups, whatever it is, to be clever about how to get to doing the things that you want to do and doing them with enough frequency. So I believe that's the last slide. Yep. And I think my questions online at all.
So thank you so much, Jake. Yes, I do have some questions that came up, and I know people struggle with this all the time. Are there certain exercises that would be a good starting point for somebody that has been suffering from chronic pain? Maybe let's take back pain, I guess, for instance. They haven't been exercising regularly before this.
Well, walking's pretty an easy one because it's pretty accessible to most people. You can find somewhere to walk, even if your neighborhood isn't good or the weather's bad. You can go to the mall; they open early. They have training places. That's a pretty easy, low risk thing where you can try and figure out how to keep moving. But swimming pools, that unloads the back. Unweighting the system feels good. So that's a good way to start. Recumbent bikes, those are the ones that are kind of, you sit back pretty far and you can pedal. Those tend to be pretty de-stressing on the spine. So walking, recumbent bikes, swimming pool, those are pretty easy places to start.
Okay. And I did have somebody who reached out who was a former competitive athlete and would love to continue to, be a current masters athlete. The question was just the chronic pain has taken that away from her, and she's had a long time injury of an L3 fracture. So she's had a lot of chronic pain, and she's tried to manage or dull the pain. So she said, is the best advice just to keep moving, or is it something that she should probably see? Should she see somebody in therapies to maybe come up with a plan of action that would maybe help her to move forward with where she's at right now with her pain?
Yeah, I mean, the unsatisfactory answer is yes, keep moving. I mean, that's really vague though. So, the thing is her problem is super specific, right? So, if I take somebody into the clinic and they tell me, I used to be a master athlete or a competitive athlete, but I have this thing. Well, the thing is, it's multifactorial, and that's why the persistent pain program has so much total content, because it's complicated. Someone fractured a back. but normal human bone healing time frames is 6 to 8 weeks. Why does the nervous system continue to hurt well past a time that makes sense? It's because it did that to you. That's the nervous system plasticity. It gradually rewires itself as your protection mechanism says, don't do those things that hurt you before. It's going to get you again. But those are not warranted. It's well past its useful time frame. So if somebody had fractures, but then that heals just like any bone does, then it's gradually training the nervous system to rewire itself to report normal, accurate loading pain patterns. So if they do get moving and they test their spine in ways that doesn't make sense of cognitively now, like do squats with weights on their back, and that stress on the bone, the research shows, builds bone density, improves bone health, then one, they do teach their nervous system to quit yelping so much when it doesn't make sense, but then they're also gaining confidence in their mind that their body has that capacity and is capable of doing those things. So if someone comes in as physical therapy, yeah, we're going to be talking about lots of different ways of getting at that. And then is there pain management need to be involved? Does there need to be some procedures done? Does there also need to be some other lifestyle factors changed? Lots of things. So it isn't easy to answer, but somebody comes in, they tend to have 45-minute appointments with us and we hash it out.
Okay. And if somebody is actually interested in an appointment through TMC's therapy department, can you just explain what that process is like? What do they need to do?
Just a referral from the doctor. So it could say anything that they want, as long as it's whatever that ails them, like back pain. It could be from primary care doctor. They just need one faxed over, and then we'll get them scheduled.
Okay, and I am putting the number up on the screen for everybody. It is the phone number to reach out if you have questions is 520-324-7005. So, Jake, I want to thank you so much for being here today. This was great. It was really good to hear a lot more about what we can do with exercise for chronic pain. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here today. We are going to have our next presentation on sleep and persistent pain. That will happen tomorrow at 10 a.m. So if you are interested in that actual presentation, please give us a call in the office. The number is 520-324-1960. Thanks for being here.